Hello, everybody. Today we're going to talk about sellers' property disclosures. We're going to talk about home inspections and some of the interplay between sellers' property disclosures, home inspections, basically uh, conveying a property that everybody knows everything about, and keeping you and your clients out of trouble, whether that's a buyer client or a seller client. I'm going to get in here and I'm going to do a screen share on and off to show you a bunch of stuff that I've packed into my dot loop. That's a good way for me to organize it. And then after this, we'll send out the recording and we'll send out a bunch of documents, or Terry will. So keep an eye open for those emails. Um, I also mentioned to everybody before we started recording that I'll probably talk a little bit about the new appraisal standard that's coming down the line. And keep your eyes open. We're going to be emailing out a webinar that was recorded yesterday. Um, Plus, we're going to send out a slideshow that goes with that from the appraiser instructor who gave it. I want everybody to understand the new stuff on this appraisal standard. Has anybody heard anything about this new appraisal standard?
I have
What'd you hear?
just I'm a friend I'm friends with an appraiser and she was telling me how they are adjusting. I don't really remember what all she told me because this was a couple months ago, but that they're making major changes that are going to affect the way we do business.
Yep. So keep in mind the current appraisal form came into being back in 2005. Who was licensed in 2005?
Me,
I'm going to put my
Me.
hand down. Um, so that form was designed to be filled out on a typewriter, right? And everything in there is very free form, where appraisers can put in all kinds of narrative stuff. They can add all kinds of addenda. So what they're doing is trying to make this a more standardized practice. If I was an appraiser, I'd be quaking in my boots because they're trying to streamline this to the point that eventually we may not need appraisers. So this new form is not a flat PDF. This is a computerized form with drop downs. Um, and one of the things that your sellers are going to need to do is provide a little bit more information for the appraiser, because if the appraiser doesn't know, they're going to guess. What are they going to guess about? The age and the upgrade, the age of the upgrades to the bathroom, the age of the upgrades to the kitchen, the age of the HVAC, the age of the roof, major components, right? And if they don't know, they're going to guess. And if they guess, are they going to guess on the high side or the low side? Well, I would hate for them to guess on the low side and screw up your appraisal. So this creates a tremendous opportunity for you as listing agents to provide value for your seller. And we'll talk about that a little bit more, probably on a whole nother session. But if we can provide updates, and if there's anything that's sketchy, confirmation that yes, that roof might look old, but it's good. I had a roofing certification done on it. Or here's the records on the HVAC, or here's what we've done, a whole list of upgrades to the property. You've solidified a bunch of things and taken the guesswork out of it and provided great value for your seller. Um, I think that that could be a real differentiating factor for you as listing agents going forward, understanding that process, understanding that form, and understanding the burden that's now going to be on the appraiser. If you can make that appraiser's job easier and take out the guesswork, you provided value for everybody in that equation. Okay, hang on. I'm going to hit this share button as we get into. Hang on, too many windows open, everybody. As we get into this, I'm going to tell you about my favorite resource. If you've been on these before, you'll know what my favorite resource is. Anybody tell me what that is?
Users
Absolutely
note or
no.
users guide.
User's guide. Where do I find the user's guide or the
To-do list.
guidelines? The guidelines for preparation and use. Where do I find those?
Uh, Dotlu
Exactly wrong.
or
I'm
dot
messing with
mine is.
parealtors.org. Go to parealtors.org, and every one of our forms has a companion piece, a printed guidelines for preparation and use. I'll show you those as we get in here, but if you want to understand the form, go to parealtors.org. So we're going to talk about the PA disclosure law. I've got a copy of that in here. We're gonna, and did you know, a lot of for sale by owners, why do they go for sale by owner? They don't want to handle all the paperwork. A lot of them think that they don't have to do a property disclosure because it's not in the real estate or they're not using a realtor. Um, they're totally unaware of the disclosure law. But the PA disclosure law is not just for MLS sales. That's for every property that's sold in the state of Pennsylvania unless it meets one of the exemptions. So your ordinary occupant is going to have to fill that out. We're going to talk about who's included and who is excluded. We're going to talk about home inspections and what they cover. We'll talk about what happens if the home inspector misses something. How do you advise your client? We're going to talk about the inspection contingency window, um, how we negotiate it, and then how to protect your clients. Let me scroll. I'm going to include this good article in the email that goes out to you with additional information that is just a real quick review on the inspection. I'm not going to dwell on that. I don't want to waste time on it. I want to talk more about the seller's property disclosure law. So it's required on every transfer of real estate, residential real estate. What qualifies as residential real estate, everybody?
Under 4 doors or less?
Yeah, there you go. 1 to 4 units, 5 and above's commercial. That's the HUD rule. It's also the Pennsylvania rule. The exceptions are properties that must be sold pursuant to a court order, such as an estate, bankruptcy, eminent domain, condemnation, and transfers resulting from decree of specific performance. I'm not sure what that would be. So people that are forced to sell their home. I don't know what the logic is there, but that's the rule, so we're going to follow it. Just a note, that doesn't change their responsibility to disclose known material defects. They don't have to fill out a seller property disclosure as it's understood under state law, but they do need to let you know about known material defects. So, what's one of the most common questions we have in estates, guys? Does the executor need to fill out a seller property disclosure? Technically, no. But do they need to disclose those material defects? Technically, yes. What's the easiest way to disclose those known material defects? In my mind, it's a seller property disclosure. So I encourage all estates to fill out a seller property disclosure, alerting them that unknown is a perfectly acceptable answer. And they should say unknown. Don't guess. Say unknown if you know it. One great way to protect our estate sellers, I'm a big fan of Seller Shield. Small amount of money, big amount of peace of mind. Um, so On a repo, if the bank takes the property, the guy who lost his house doesn't need to fill out a property disclosure. From one co-owner to another co-owner or co-owners, you don't have to do a disclosure. From a spouse to a person or persons in the line of Kent, they're going to make me say that word, in the immediate family. So if you're selling it to your spouse or to your kid or to your grandkid, you don't need to do a seller property disclosure. Between spouses from a divorce or by a corporation or partnership or other association to its shareholders, partners, or other equity owners, or of a property to be converted by the buyer to a use other than residential or to be demolished. So if you're selling a house to somebody who's going to be using it for a commercial purpose, or if they're going to knock it down, a seller property disclosure isn't required. But usually we encourage our people to do that seller's property disclosure when we start to market it, right? We don't know that that's going to happen. Or of unimproved real property. So vacant lots. Why do I read through all this stuff? Pardon me. What's the one thing that we don't see in there as an exclusion? Landlords or people who have never lived in the property, right? That's not an exclusion. We still need to fill out a seller property disclosure. And I know that that's something that we often get pushback on. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yep. How do you deal with that? Tell them it's not my decision. This is
Law.
this is the law. And I'm just trying to save you from headaches and limit your liability down the road. So I will send this seller disclosure law to you so you can entertain your friends and family by knowing all of this stuff, but I'm not going to get too far into the weeds other than section B here talks about the contents of the seller property disclosure. So sometimes I get a smarty pants attorney who says we don't need to fill out this full PAR seller property disclosure. They're absolutely right. Under the state law, there's 16 items that are recorded here. So from roof, basements and crawl spaces, structural problems, soil, hazardous, hazmat, stuff like that. That's the bare minimum. So the PAR form goes far and above what the state legislature requires. Why do we why do we include all those items in the seller's property disclosure? Because somebody got sued over every single one of those things and we're trying to get in front of it, right? Just like the rest of our contract. It used to be one page, I think it was 3 pages when I started, and now it's 14. Every line in that contract is a lawsuit. This talks about how that disclosure is to be delivered, who it's to be delivered to. So if you ever have somebody who's pushing back on saying that they don't need to fill one, you can save this or bookmark it and you can send it to them and say, I'm sorry, this is not my requirement. Write your congressman. Here we go. Seller's property disclosure. That document that I just went over is cited right here as the seller's property disclosure. It says here that we have to disclose all known material defects, and it goes on to define what a material defect is as a problem with the residential real property or any portion of it that would have a significant adverse impact on the value of the property that involves an unreasonable risk to people on the property. So value or risk to the occupants. Um, the fact that an element is old is not a material defect, right? Thank goodness. It goes on to list your exclusions and it states your common law duty to disclose even if you're not doing a seller's property disclosure. Any questions so far on all this fun stuff? I'm not going to go down line by line on this seller's property disclosure unless everybody votes unanimously that you want me to bore you. Great. Okay. Um, let's talk about um, some of the hard things to disclose, right? And what are you required to disclose? We'll start with a couple of stories. Let's start with a couple of lawsuit stories because those are things that I'm dealing with right now, and I don't want you to have to deal with them. We sold a property about 2 years ago. We sold a property about 2 years ago, and the property had a well. Those people owned it for about 2 years. During that 2 year period of ownership, their well went dry twice. Once on the weekend that they moved in, they were pressure washing the house, used a whole bunch of water, and the well went dry. All right. Not a problem for many, many months until it went dry again. They found out that they had a toilet that was running. Sometime before they figured out the toilet was running, they called a well service company to come out, offer them some advice. The guy hops out of his truck in the driveway and says, "You need to drill a new well. You should put it right here, and it'll cost you about $30,000." The homeowner said, "Appreciate it. I thought you were supposed to bring some sort of tools or something and actually look at the equipment. I'm going to get a second opinion." He calls a plumber, finds out the toilet's running. They replace the toilet, and they have no more problems with the water supply in the house during their ownership. They disclose both of those incidents in the seller property disclosure, and then they sell the property. Did they do what was supposed to be done?
Yeah. Yes.
All right, I got a yes. I've got a no from Annette.
Yes.
Let's talk about it. Annette, you're on mute.
I might have missed it. Are you saying they did not disclose it?
They did. They put both of those particular
Oh,
incidents in
sorry.
the disclosure.
Okay.
So, about a year and a half after they sold the property, and I agree with all of you. I think that we did what we were supposed to do. We disclosed the incidents in particular and what the problem was. We get served a lawsuit, or a lawsuit is served on the seller. Um, as luck would have it, the well went dry again, and the new homeowners called the same well guy.
Oh, geez.
Every time. It's going to happen every time, right? They called the same well guy, and he comes out and he says, "I told them they needed a new well." Well, what's the standard there? The guy came out, he didn't look at a damn thing, and he said, "You need a new well right there, and it's going to cost you $30,000. Now, should they have disclosed that? I don't know. I really don't. I've talked with attorneys. Attorneys say there's a requirement in the state to disclose. It doesn't state to what degree you have to disclose. You have to disclose there was a problem. You don't have to give all the gory details. It was the buyer's job to ask the question. But are we still in court or mediation over this thing? Yeah, we are. Right? So what's your ultimate objective?
It sounds more like that was an opinion that was given to them.
It sounds like an opinion to me too. So where does it stop? If Renewal by Anderson is driving down my street, knocks on my door, talks to my wife and says, "You need new windows," do I have to disclose that?
No,
You're right.
absolutely.
I mean, your guess is as good as mine. So is the fact that the homeowner called the guy, is that the delineating factor? I still think that our homeowners were correct. I still think that the buyer should have gone the extra mile, but there's something I've learned over the years. Just because you're right doesn't mean you'll win, and anybody can sue anybody for anything, and you still have to pay to defend it in court. So if your objective is to have a clean deal and not have to hear from them again, you may want to go that further step and disclose all the gory details. Again, I'm not a paid spokesperson for Seller Shield,
Hmm.
but you spend $300 and they have, it's like a warranty for your sellers. It's an extra $25,000 there in legal defense fund for you, or for your sellers. It's worth the hassle, in my opinion. When we sold my grandmother's estate, I made my mom get it. I was like, yes, just make it go away. All right. So that's something that we had to deal with. We had another thing that turned into a lawsuit or mediation, or is strongly headed in that direction right now. We had a buyer walk through one of our listings. He says, that beam looks funny. We're like, okay. He said, knock off $10,000 and I'll fix it. The seller said, I would prefer to pay for it to be repaired because I think it's going to be less than that $10,000. She called up a contractor, or she suggested a contractor to the buyer's agent. That contractor met the buyer's agent on site. They agreed on a scope of work, made the repairs. He did the pre-settlement walkthrough. Our listing agent amended the seller's property disclosure to reflect that structural issue with the beam, and we thought we were happy until a year and a half later, he starts threatening to sue people. He called in a structural engineer after the fact because the house was sinking. Again, where did we go wrong? Did we go wrong? The plot thickens. The contractor never pulled permits.
Boy.
Hmm.
On a structural repair in that township and most townships, permits are required. And in that township and most townships, an engineer's stamp is required on the plan to make those structural alterations.
Well, we would think that would be on the contractor, the seller. Call them
Thank
in good
you.
faith,
Thank you.
in
I
good
believe that
faith,
too. And
and
in
paid for it
speaking,
to be resolved.
yeah, in
The
speaking with
contractor dropped the ball.
our attorney agreed. Just because you recommend your best friend to go to your doctor and they botched the surgery, it was the doctor holding the scalpel, not you, right? Same
Bingo.
thing with contractors. But
But that, don't you find that that is something that does often come back on us when we recommend people? That's why I've stopped recommending.
and that's the point I want to make. Just because you're right doesn't mean you win, and you still have to pay to defend it. If,
Right.
you know, it puts a little bit more space between us if we're recommending a large company.
Hmm.
I asked the guy, why are you suing me? I didn't do the work. And he said, the contractor's broke. All right. Since we have our own signs, you think we're made of money. I get it. But that's, if you can provide a, a bona fide contractor, you're recommending Tucky Mechanical or one of these big companies who has 85 trucks on the road every day, they are more likely to provide that full scope of work. They're going to get those permits and they're going to defend themselves as opposed to
And honestly,
bucket.
why would you have to recommend somebody like that? Like the buyers and sellers need to be more accountable. Especially nowadays. I mean, anybody can look that information up. I feel like from now to when, say, back in, I don't know, 2003, I feel like we're so disconnected to say cover our butts, to wash our hands of any liability.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes we got sellers who are like, I don't know. I've been living under a rock for 30 years. I'm practically a hermit. Do you know somebody? Yeah, I got somebody. Here's three, or, you know, at least try and make sure that they're bonded and insured, and they can defend it in court. If you're dealing with a guy and a hammer, and a pickup truck, that's what happened here. This guy was a good old boy that everybody knew he was going to come out and he was going to swing the hammer and he was going to get it done quick and cheap. I'm not saying go for the most expensive guy. I'm just saying sometimes it's sometimes these are the things that blow back on us. So I want to throw those things out there so you have a little red flag living in your head.
So, Justin,
Yeah.
as a best practice, as far as, because you're right. I mean, you can honestly, at the end of the day, anybody can sue for anything. I mean,
Yep.
I think we can all agree on that. You can find some sort of loophole. So, from our position in a safeguard, I will typically, if because you're right. I mean, we're the front runners for advising, and who do you know, et cetera, et cetera. Who would you use? We're the trusted advisors. We're going to get these questions.
Yep.
Typically, I will send an email. And again, nothing's going to be 100%, but just, these are the top 3 to 4 people I like. List the 3 to 4 people, lenders, contractors, plumbers, whatever. I strongly encourage you to call each one of these people yourself and do your due diligence and ask these questions. You have that in an email. You're not recommending one person, you're recommending several. They pick the wrong one or one who's having a bad day. Where's our culpability in that?
I think you're okay in that case. I mean, ultimately, I hate that I have to talk to you guys about this. All I want to do is put a buyer in a house and see him smile
Right.
and provide for my family, just like you guys,
And, Monday morning quarterback, I mean, everybody does their due diligence, everybody's happy, and then hindsight, great, but you don't know what you don't know. So
That's it.
is that email cement you like, a few options instead of just one option? Oh, I love this inspector. Oh, I love this plumber. Use this one. Maybe
Right.
best
I've
practice.
had good, I was
Then with
talking with
you.
some agents in my office. These are some people that were recommended that they had good experience with, although I've never worked with any of them personally, or I've worked
Yeah,
with him and had good results on those occasions. You know,
right. Okay.
stop short of saying, this is your guide, don't call anyone else.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. Any more on that before I go back to sharing?
I have a quick question. Is there
Yeah.
any statute of limitation? So if your well example had happened 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road. Now, in that example, is the bad misfortune of the same well guy. So I guess it's how long his memory is. But I mean, is it really truly no limit? Like it could be that 10 years later after the sale, somebody comes back?
2 years.
Okay.
2 years unless they can prove fraud,
Okay.
at which point it's 2 years from the time they discovered the fraud, I believe. I'm not an
Okay.
attorney, but I've
But it's
watched
not
Law and Order.
forever.
Yeah,
It's a
not
period of
forever.
time. Okay.
Not forever. And that's why on these seller shield things, if you get the 2 or 3 year coverage, you're usually cool.
Then you're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Don't go for the 4 year thing because it's overkill.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about disclosure, of course, this had to happen with my own kid. I sold him a house last year in Mount Joy. He got married in May. Going to be married a year on Sunday. And we never knew it. And her father wanted a fixer-upper, and that's what we got. And there was a fire in that house. And it was never on the seller disclosure. And the neighbors came by when they moved in and told them. And the Reams Fire Department has a record of it. And he said, who do I sue? I said, nobody, because they were going to foreclosure, getting a divorce, and you're going to get nothing. Save your energy. Am I
And
right?
you're probably right. I mean, what were under the seller's property disclosure law? It's a different thing if it's fraud, but if it's non-disclosure, your damages are the damages. So
Yeah.
what were their damages? Were they going to fix it up any less?
Not sure. Not sure. Her father got his hand in that.
Yeah.
He helped
So,
them a lot.
if there was no actual damages, like you can't really go after them. There might be an attorney with a different opinion on that, but it's
That's
it's
what
a
I told him. I think it's a mute point at this point.
right. It's a matter of what the damages were. So the fact that there was a fire, is that a problem? Yes. But did they have to go in and make significant repairs because of the fire damage? If the answer is no, then they may
Made
not.
homemade repairs. They took the insurance check and they repaired it themselves. And
Okay.
it looks like it. Yep.
Got it. All righty. let me go back to where we got this. Okay, you're all familiar with this. Um, one of the other things that is difficult and if you're a listing agent and you see that your client has skipped something, that's our job to make sure that they get that filled out, please. If you're a buyer's agent and you see a blank on one of these, that's your job to direct your client to that and ask the question. Because we've seen lawsuits where a buyer's agent observed a bunch of improperly filled out disclosures, didn't ask any questions, their client didn't know any better, and then they turned into problems, right? So I know it's a pain in the neck. You're showing 10 properties. You've got 10 property disclosures. Everything goes together. When you're writing the offer and you're reviewing the seller's property disclosure, do yourself and your client a favor, review that and, you know, draw their attention to any questions. Particularly if there's been additions, alterations, or it's a flip. Why do buyers like flips? Oh my gosh, it's practically new. Were the permits pulled? That's a big question, and we've had that come back on us numerous times where there was a flip done, big time structural alterations and no permits were pulled. Or a garage was turned into a living space and that wasn't permitted. We found out that that garage was accessory use and it was turned into a bedroom. So now it was over the setback. That's a problem. Or it wasn't inspected and the wiring wasn't up to code. And now we're stuck trying to figure out what we need to do to make this buyer satisfied that their house isn't going to burn down. Um, Another real good one is easements, right of ways. We had one that went to court because, let me get to the right spot. Are you aware of any encroachments, boundary line disputes, or easements affecting the property? Our seller client marked yes. Under explain any yes, it said 50-foot easement on south property line. Buyer's agent asked a couple cursory questions. Seller agent explained it. Seller agent did not have a copy of the easement agreement or any kind of map depicting it, okay? The buyer's agent did elect that contingency in the agreement of sale. This deal fell apart because the buyer said that they didn't realize that there was a access easement to the property behind. And it was disclosed in here as yes, and it said 50-foot easement. It didn't say what the easement was for. That was over a $15,000 EMD. It went to mediation, which failed. It went to small claims court over that issue. So how do we avoid that? Well, on the buyer side, we had that contingency elected. That's when you pick up the phone and you have that call with the title company and say, I've got 15 days. I need to understand this easement. Can you please run the title report, run the title search now? We need that before 15 days, right?
Sorry.
Hey, Steve,
Yeah.
quick question. Hang on a second.
Yes. Okay. As a listing agent, I encourage you to provide that deed and any other supporting information so that the buyer can make that decision, or at least draw their attention to it. Are we title people? No. Do I want you swearing on everything that's in that deed? No. We might miss something. That easement might have been recorded on another property, and we might not have all the details, right? But again, I just want this to be a red flag that lives in your head, that when you're going through this disclosure and you see it, you raise your hand and say, can you give me some more background information on it? How did that one settle up? Well, it went to court, and the judge split the pig, gave everybody $7,500 out of that 15,000.
Even though they had it elected,
Yep.
how is
And that-
that? I don't even understand.
Like I said, in that, just because you're right doesn't mean you win, because I have zero faith in district magistrates' understanding of the agreement of sale.
Right?
They don't get it.
Don't know anything.
Most judges don't. Half the attorneys don't. But we live with this every day, and it's really frustrating when they don't get it and they don't want to learn it. So again, I talked to you guys about the guidelines for preparation and use. If you're not aware of this resource, dig into it, because there's great notes for form users. There's general notes on how to use the forms. There's they talk about the legal requirements that are associated. And then they also are going to have different tips and tricks for the use. Like it'll go right in here and tell you for many questions, there are no time limits put on the disclosure. It says if you know about it or if it occurred, prior to your occupancy, what your need to disclose is. So I encourage you to go through those things. It'll put you right to sleep, but it's a good resource.
I have a question. If you
Yeah.
see something on the disclosure that's not right as you think, could you ask the seller agent to correct it?
Um, I yes, I would encourage that. Just
Yeah.
for their protection or for your protection, at least get it in email, an explanation of it.
Yeah.
So, because like we know, anybody can sue anybody for anything. If there's inaccurate information in there, you need to show that you alerted your buyer of some inconsistency in that. So, and you don't want to be the one instructing them. You want it to come from the source, right?
Yeah. Well, there's one section in there that shows like it's 2 columns. You have to mark it if there's anything wrong with the appliances and stuff.
Yes.
I've seen so many of those disclosures that the sellers check, yes, I have a washer, yes, I have a dryer, yes, I have a refrigerator. And then I see it, it's like, what are they checking? And I always call the agent and say, that needs to be changed.
Yeah.
I
Could you
can't give that to my client.
Yep, I agree. Can you please provide clarification on that?
Okay.
And this is a great time to talk about the new stuff that's going to be happening with the appraisals. So now the appraiser is going to be required to offer information on upgrades. Like they're going to want to know the condition of appliances, refrigerators, dishwashers, HVAC units. Are these things operational? This might be part of your discussion with your seller. You might consider doing a pre-listing inspection, not just to remove questions or inspection contingencies from buyers, but to give you another resource to make sure that when the property does sell, that you're able to provide that as a resource to the appraiser so that the appraisal comes in where you want it to. I'm not saying you
But
give
Justin, why, I guess I get worried because why do we have to provide all that? The appraisers are now being paid $600. Why are they not talking to the seller about that stuff if they have questions on it? Why do we have to put our necks on the line for everything? And
I'm not saying that you should put your neck on the line for a second. I'm
that's what it
saying
feels like we're getting stuck doing. You know what I mean with all these changes?
now,
And going back to disclosure, they changed all that, what, not long ago, maybe a year or two, with the way they did the appliance stuff. And I think people just get confused especially if they filled them out in the past. They think, oh,
Yep.
this is what I did in the past.
I agree.
So if you're not sitting there going over that with your seller, they don't read all that little print above. They're just marking, yes, this is what I have, not knowing that you're supposed to mark, is it in working order?
Oh, I get it. I agree. Yes, they did change that. Um, am I saying that you should take this on the neck? No, I don't think that this should be your burden. I'm saying we get paid to
But
get it closed.
ultimately, it's coming back to us.
Well, we get paid to get the deal closed, not close, right? If you want to get it closed, sometimes we have to do a lot. How many times have I done the buyer's agent job? How many times have I done the listing agent job? And how many times have I done the appraiser's job? A lot. But the time the appraiser has a lot of power in this situation,
I understand that.
and they have a code of ethics, right? They can't change their opinion just because we disagree with it. The proper time to change an appraiser's or influence an appraiser's opinion of value is before they make up their mind. So we have a better opportunity than we ever have to influence that. I've talked plenty of times. I learned this from Iva, a decade or and a half ago. Uh, you put together a packet of information for that appraiser to lead them down your thought process. And that was confirmed from the trainer that I had yesterday talking about it. Appraisers like that. But if you don't tell them what you're thinking beforehand, then the chances are slim to none that they're going to change their opinion after the fact.
After the fact. I
Right.
do that whenever I have the listing or the buyer for that matter. Because usually the thought is, well, the listing agent came up with the price, it's the burden on the listing agent. I do it for
Right.
both.
I do too. And
And I call the
and this
listing
is
agent and I'll say to the agent, I'll say, hey, do you mind if I go into the property, just kind of whatever, and drop off a little love letter to the appraiser? And this is why we escalated, and this is what we thought, and it was a multiple offer situation, et cetera, et cetera.
and one of the things I do is ask them to give me a list of upgrades to the property that you've made during your ownership, right? Uh,
Yes.
that doesn't change. We give that to this appraiser in this new situation. We're just being organized. Do we want to answer these questions onesie twosie as they come along, or do we want to just give them a packet and say, here you go? That's where I'm at. And,
Well, and I
I just,
guess just I wouldn't want to stop doing that because that was great advice, and I do it every time.
and there's
So
no
the new
reason to
appraisal,
stop it. I'm just
correct.
saying,
So I'm asking though, like that, but yeah, that's so like to the other point about like culpability from us and everything, and our necks are on the line. That wouldn't continue. Like I'm suggesting this. I'm living a letter. I'm saying that these are upgraded. This is the list of improvements. Are our necks now on the line if we continue to leave these packets under these new guidelines that are coming?
not if that information comes from your seller or a third
Okay,
party. I'm saying, do
right?
you want an appraiser guessing the age of a roof on your property?
No.
No, I don't. I'd rather have, if we have a home inspection and the inspector says the roof is good, give them that information. I'm saying I don't want to give them a full home inspection. I want to give them the stuff that tells the tale I want it to tell.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So I do have a question on your pre-inspection, though, Justin. So if the seller does a home inspection beforehand and they know what's going on and say they fix a few things, whatever, then the buyer gets a home inspector because they don't want to trust the seller, which, we've seen that stuff before. And what if the new inspector comes up with different things now or says it wasn't right because in their mind they don't think it's right? I mean, now you've had, what I'm saying? Where do you
Mostly,
balance this all out?
mostly we arm wrestle
Okay. I
to
mean,
figure
I've
out.
never done pre-inspections, but I'm beginning to think that they're not a bad idea.
Yeah.
But
Um,
do you know what I'm saying?
I wanted to go under contract once.
Right. Me too.
Um, and I want to provide that security. Now, I made a mistake of getting a pre-inspection one time. I put it in the MLS so everybody could have it. I'm stupid, so I forgot to pull it out of the MLS and the appraiser used it for a shopping list.
Oh, God.
Don't
Okay.
do that.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, see, like last week, I showed a house that came back on the market and it fell through because of a home inspection. So one of the problems was cracks in the cement block wall.
yeah,
And they shared the inspection with us because my people wrote on it and they were asking for their own inspection. So afterwards, she said, my seller will sign your offer if you remove the home inspection contingency. And I said, why would I want to do that? And she said, well, I'll send you the home inspection from the previous one. Well, in there was, of course, this structural issue. They had somebody come out. Evidently, the guy recommended that they put like bars against the wall or something to happen. Now, I didn't see it in the basement, but I don't know. But they filled in the joints and he was guaranteeing the cracks for the rest of whatever it was, however many years it was, but he was not guaranteeing anything else, like if it got water in the basement or anything like that. So my buyer is like, I still want to have my own inspection done, at least structural, want to bring in a structural person to make sure that it was done the right way. And you know what I mean? They would not sign our offer because we would not take that inspection off the table.
fair enough. You dodged a bullet.
Yeah, well, that's what I'm thinking. They
Did
were
they
hiding
did they
something.
update their property disclosure, Lori?
No, because they feel like she said to me, you have to have a structural engineer. No inspector is going to be able to guarantee that. And I said, I understand that. And that's what they want to do. And she's like, no, he won't sign it. And they ended up putting it under contract then with somebody else over the weekend. But in my mind, they're hiding something because why would you not allow us to have a structural engineer just come in and say yay or nay?
Yep. You don't want those people to have to live with that.
No, and they're young buyers.
Yep.
So.
And you want to be able to sell that house again with a clear conscience.
But see, so on the other hand, that's where the seller, you know what I mean? Like they said, we'll give you the seller report, and then they don't want us to have our own. And what does it matter if we have our own? Do you know what I'm
I
saying? So that's where, like, what do
I
you do
agree.
with two different inspections?
I agree. And home inspectors are an extra set of eyes from, you know, a talented uncle who knows his way around a house, right? These
Correct.
guys are not specialists.
Right, right. And I tell my people that.
That's right. So I rely on the specialists. These guys are an extra set of eyes. Um, we have this form here that tries to combine a few other things. I'm not going to beat that dead horse. We'll get around to it. I'm going to include this article in my email to you about disclosing it. I think that's a Jim Goldsmith one. No, Brian Carter. So, what are the time frames that we need to know in our seller in our agreement of sale, guys? Standard, unmodified. What are our time frames regarding inspections?
10, 5, and 2.
10, 5, and 2. Tell me what the 10, 5, and 2 are.
10 days to have the inspection done and have the buyers reply.
Yes.
5 days for the seller to then, uh, agree to what the buyer requested. And then 2 days for the buyer to decide if they're going to accept what the seller.
Absolutely correct. One of the main malfunctions that I hear a lot is the inspections getting done on day 10, and then the buyer's agent sends the reply on day 11, misconstruing that 5-day period is for negotiation, right? That 10-day period is for having the inspections done and providing the reply. You guys all know that. You showed up to training. If you see somebody on the street, stop them and say, hey, that 10 days requires you to get the inspection back too. I mean, has anyone ever had somebody miss the deadline on them and say, oops, I misunderstood that? It happens all the time. I'm shocked. Now, here's something that's interesting and happens from time to time. Tell me if it's ever happened to you where you have a listing, your buyer or the buyer makes an offer contingent upon a home and property inspection and environmental hazards. Maybe also a WDI. And then the radon guy calls you and says, and they waive the radon, and then the home inspector says, "Hey, I'm setting a unit. I'll be by in 2 days to pick it up," and there was no contingency elected. What are your thoughts on that? Has that ever happened to you? Because the radon guy, the home inspector, he's just trying to upsell, and he doesn't know what our contract says. Do you allow that to happen? Yes or no? Sound off.
No.
No.
Anybody a yes? Why not? What's the problem? What's it hurt?
Well, the hurt is if they have a radon done and you didn't agree to it, now the house has radon. The seller is either gonna have to disclose it or fix it. If,
Contractually, are they allowed to do that?
no, they shouldn't be allowed to do that, but
Well, I'm not going to make a reply, Lori. I just want the results. I'm not going to make a reply to it.
But
You
under
own the
the
house.
under the property inspection, environmental, I don't know, that kind of throws a little bit of a flag.
Exactly the argument I had with my partner Chris one day. He says, "Why can't you?" I said, because on line 339 it says the buyer waives or elects to have the following inspections done. Not the right to negotiate on them, the right to even have them done. And if they waived that radon inspection, they're not doing it on my watch because they're going to go negotiate harder on their home inspection, knowing what the results are of that radon inspection. Am I right? You know, they might be asking for $1,000 to repair a broken light switch on the home inspection because they know they have a radon test to deal with. So that's my logic on that. You either waive or elect the right to do the inspection, not the right to negotiate on it.
Anytime I had a buyer, say there was a pool, I would go and do at the bottom, yeah, do like a separate pool inspection.
Yep.
And I had a house, I had the cellar, and it was a very, very bad situation, but ended up somebody out there on a Saturday at like 8 a.m. drilling because it had those covers over it, like the elephant cover.
Yeah.
And this guy had some major issues, the seller did, and just he wasn't easy to deal with. And I had no idea that they were doing a pool inspection. It was never set up with me at all. And
Right.
actually saying that if you go back and look under the home property inspections, it's in there.
Yep. It is. Chimneys too. You know, you can do just about everything. Plumbing that's inside the house, not outside the house.
But that's also like environmental. Wouldn't radon be under environmental, which is under home inspection?
It could be. And that was the discussion we had. And I would have, but you can't elect it generally and then waive it specifically.
Right. Yeah, I guess that's a totally separate issue.
I would
Right.
say because it's radon is called out separately, that doesn't pertain above.
Correct. Because you specifically waived it. You can't say I include it generally up here. And now if it wasn't a separate heading, then I would say, yeah, that home inspection, that includes that. But it doesn't in this case. You can do all the other air quality testing you want in the house, just not for radon, oddly enough. property boundaries. That is a whopper, right? Um, Anybody have any fun experience with property boundaries? It's real fun in Pennsylvania because the property lines run from the stump to the pile of rocks to the middle of the creek, and then back to where the barn used to stand that burned down in 32. Um, so on properties that are not clearly delineated or haven't had a survey on them, I leave that up to the client's decision. Um, Survey's not cheap, right?
No.
No. $1,000 minimum. And we've had, $5,000 surveys, especially in the middle of summer where there's lots of leaves and it takes a lot for these guys to get out there. So be aware of those. Lead-based paint. We have to do our seller property disclosure by state law. What about the lead-based paint? Um, that's not a state law, right? Federal
Federal.
requirement. Let's see what other fun stuff we can cook up here. Anybody remember before the BRI? Didn't used to be one of these forms. There was the
Yeah, I know.
RR, the reply to inspection. The reply to inspection was basically a change in terms. This does not require anybody's signature but the buyer. This is a communication tool because the agreement of sale requires that we make written notification of what we're going to do or what we want. This is that. So how's this supposed to flow? Buyer's agent fills this out. Is it up to the listing agent to do the change in terms? Anybody have an opinion on that? If I'm the buyer's agent, I fill out the change in terms and I send it with the buyer's reply, hoping they'll just sign it. And then I have the language I want included. Sometimes the listing agent's going to fill it out with different language and send it back. Make sure that nobody's playing games with the language on what is put into your change in terms.
That's what I usually do. I fill it out at the same time, the
Yeah.
change in terms.
Yeah. So if somebody
I want a
changes,
signature as well.
yeah. And if somebody changes the wording and sends you back a change in terms that's differently worded, make sure it covers what you need it to. Can you fill out multiple ones of these? Yes, you can. But you can only do one change in terms. Be careful if you sign a change in terms during that contingency period, the seller might be trying to consider that as a change in terms for all inspections. So make sure that the change in terms you sign covers everything you need it to. I would be reluctant to send one buyer's a reply to inspection for the home inspection and not include your radon and water tests on it, and then sign a change in terms before you get the water and radon inspections included in that change in terms. Because according to the contract, once you sign that change in terms, technically negotiations are over and they might try to slam the door on you. So I would make sure that that change in terms is all inclusive. One other thing, if you don't terminate of our 10, 5, and 2 guys, can we terminate as a buyer during any time during that 17-day saga?
No.
Okay. When can we terminate?
As a buyer?
Yep.
They can terminate in the last two.
And ooh, I found a good one. Found a good one to talk about then. Let me get back to this.
I mean, they can terminate in the first 10 too.
Yes, they can terminate in the 10 and the 2. We can't terminate during the 5. There's, whoops.
Yeah, so after the first 10, it's either accept it or terminate or negotiate.
Right. You guys are all locked in during that 5-day period. The buyers cannot terminate during that 5-day period, right? Now, when can the seller terminate?
During the
Can't.
5?
Seller cannot terminate.
They
Only
can't.
thing the seller can do is make it difficult and say no, no,
Oh.
no. That was a trick question. Thank you
Oh,
for not
oh,
falling for
well.
it. But so now, if we want to terminate during that 5-day period, we're going to use a different form. We're going to suggest a mutual release. That's not the termination form. That's the AREL, okay? Okay, well, we've burned an hour. Is there anything else that anybody wants me to cover on here? Oh, we've got a home inspection. It terminated. What do we have to disclose as a listing agent? Do we have to disclose every damn thing that shows up in that seller's property or in the home inspection report? Remember where I pointed out on the seller's property disclosure, the definition of material defect? Those are the things we need to disclose. Now, does that help us when that buyer calls the same home inspector and turns up a whole bunch of stuff? Where's our trust level when they find out that there was 32 things that were nearing the end of their life? Doesn't build trust. Were we within the law? Yeah. Is everybody happy? Probably not.
Probably not.
So even if you provide that seller's property or that home inspection report as an addendum to the seller's property disclosure, I still recommend you fill out an addendum to the seller's property disclosure to make sure that everybody's protected. It's up to your seller whether or not they use that inspection report. We don't know. How much of that is judgment calls? How much of it's trash? That's a case by case analysis. And we can talk about that if you ever get those situations, right? So this has been an introduction. I'm going to send you a whole bunch more information to read over if you want it. If you have questions on any of these things and these red flags come up, please give me a call and we'll talk through it. Any other questions or scenarios you want to talk through?
I have some.
Get your phone number.
What do you got?
I'm
Huh?
sorry. So someone else was talking.
Oh, my phone number? 717-713-3393.
Thank you.
Yeah. April, what do you got?
So I think I know this answer, but I'll ask you. So if you're past your 10 days, your buyer has replied, now you're in your 5-day period, and today's day 5, and the seller has not responded because they're waiting on the appraisal. Like, well, we'll see if there's any additional repairs. Well, we don't get the appraisal. And now tomorrow is the day 1 of the buyer's 2 days. In that time frame, I'm assuming you can just either terminate, agree to accept as is, or at that point, you're still able to do a change in terms.
Yes, if you're doing a change in terms to extend that time frame, use the block at the bottom that is specifically for extending the time frame.
Okay. Otherwise, you could just send over like, hey, we're still asking for this repair, either sign this or we're terminating.
Right?
Okay.
Yep.
Or you can, like you said, extend the time frame.
Yeah,
Okay.
but if they don't reply, you're stuck
That's
holding
the
the bag.
problem.
You're buying the house as is.
Right.
Correct. Yeah, so I would say like, so if tomorrow's day one, you could send over potentially another 2-day extension or something, and otherwise, yeah, I guess you're terminating after that 2-day extension, or not if they don't sign the change in terms to extend it, you're terminating the very next day
Correct.
of day 2 of your 2 days.
Correct. Yep.
Got it.
Correct.
I got a question about where do you find out if they pulled permits at?
Township.
Township.
Yeah, so we had a property where our buyer agent represented a buyer, purchased a flip, looked to be really good work. Um, but the buyer, I don't know what they were doing. Oh, there was some septic issues. And they went to the township and said, repairs were done to the septic. Can you tell me what the permit stated? They're like, we don't have a permit. Well, do you have any permits for this property? Nope. We have no permits on this property. Now they're questioning all the wiring and everything. Does a permit ensure that the work was done properly? No. I've seen bad work with plenty of permits. And have I seen good work without permits? Sure.
Mhm.
I redid my whole house. But good luck convincing a buyer that their place isn't going to fall into the ground if permits weren't pulled. And, how do you put the toothpaste back in the tube if the work's been done, the drywall is up, and no inspections were done on the insulation or the wiring or the plumbing? It's really hard to do.
So I just ran into a situation like that where I had the listing and they actually took out a window and put in sliding glass doors to go out to a patio area.
Yep.
And concern was about having it structurally certified to make sure like, you did it properly from going from a smaller opening to a larger opening, and asked for the permits. And I kind of asked the agents or the sellers if that was completed, and basically they were told that they didn't need to obtain a permit because they weren't changing the structure, like adding on or, and I just ran into another property in Perry County, the same thing. Like they did a whole flip, remodeled the whole thing, and it specifically says did not obtain a permit because township said we do not need it because we are not changing the actual footprint of the home.
Property, I've heard that too.
Yeah, what happens in that situation where you're trying to appease a buyer and sell the property and like there is no permit? I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, if I was doing work in that situation, I would take pictures of the work I was doing as I was doing it, show that yes, I opened up this space, but I put a header in there to transfer the load and to carry it down to the foundation. Um, that's a tough one. Can you do exploratory surgery to find out if there's a header in there? Yeah. Um, you can ask them how they did it. You can talk to the contractor maybe. Did the homeowner do it? You know, you've got different people. Like, I'm a gambler. I'm a knock on it. Does it seem sturdy? Yeah. But is that for everybody? No. You've got people that will never be satisfied unless there was a permit. And like I said, does a permit guarantee that it was done right? No.
Can you ask, probably can ask for receipts for
Yeah.
what was done? So
Yeah.
that way you don't have to open up the wall?
Yeah. I mean, get
You don't know
get
how it's done, but at least you know it was done or wasn't done.
Yeah, we
get
were
quotes from a contractor, scope of work, what was done. Did they describe it in their estimate? That would be
Mhm.
helpful.
yeah, and the one listing we were able to provide receipts, but for some reason they were still just dead set on, well, it wasn't, you didn't get a permit. No one came back in and did an inspection on to make sure it was properly done. And I'm like, well, Unfortunately, our borough doesn't have the ability to do that, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean,
There's a lot of townships and boroughs like around here too that as long as you're not changing the footprint of the property, you don't need a permit.
Yeah, I've
So
heard that too in Lancaster. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
like adding a deck, as long as you're not changing the overall footprint of the deck, you can put a new deck on
Mm-hmm.
and you don't need a permit for it. You
and
can
then you
replace a fence or a shed.
And then you've got townships where you need an
Yeah.
electrician and an inspection and a permit
Yep.
for electrical work. Uh,
Yep.
but in York City, you don't need that for electrical work, but you need a master plumber to certify that, that you installed a washer and dryer drain. Um, so yeah, it's different. And that's this, it's different in every community that we serve. And that's why it's tough to, I'm not going to go list my brother's house outside of Philly because I don't know what I'm getting into because of all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Zoning's the same way. C1 doesn't mean the same thing,
In
in
every
every one of our
place.
neighborhoods. So,
Yep.
all right, guys, great questions. Thank you for being engaged today. Glad to see new faces. And if you need anything, just give me a call and we'll go from there. Stay tuned for advertisements for next month's get together and all of that.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day. Thank you.
Appreciate
Thank
you guys.
you.
See you
Bye.
later.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you.